Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, oh there, this is Ralph Hayes Jr., RH Jr. Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet through a series of tubes known as the boob tube we call YouTube, bringing you another contribution, my contribution to the debris lining the information highway, a little thing I like to call Spleen Squeezins. And the music's playing. Hard, hard. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue. Of course, this is nothing new. I have no knowledge. Just my life is a total scrambled mess. I just don't know. It feels so quiet in here. It feels unusually quiet for some reason. I've had a busy few days. Let's see. Yesterday, ran to the hospital. Had to go to the hospital, wound care center, have them look at my legs. I spent 3 hours in there. 3 hours. Most of that just waiting. I got off the elevator at 12:30, and I did not get out until 3:30. So I know for a fact I spent 3 hours. And most of it, there's nobody there. And I'm like, why is this taking? All they had to do, 3 things. One, the nurses came in. They come in, take off the old bandage, look at my legs, take some photographs for the doctor. The doctor comes in, looks at the legs, looks at the photographs, and makes his diagnosis. And then the nurses rewrap my legs, and that's it. That's all it took. That was all was involved. And they wrote up a bunch of stuff, wrote up a bunch of papers and stuff, and prescriptions. It was an up and down kind of day. Good news, I managed to get to the doctor. I managed to actually see a doctor, have my legs looked at, and all that other crap. Good news, nothing really serious. Everything seems a-okay. Bad news, it took 3 freaking hours to do what shouldn't have taken a half hour. This coronavirus bullshit is mucking up everything. I'm not kidding you. They just getting in and out of the for my appointment was ridiculous, because they got to maintain that 6-foot space, and they actually closed off certain some of the entrances, so you could only get into the hospital through certain doorways. I'm like, what the hell is that supposed to do? Anyway. Good news, they gave me some prescriptions for some new medicine for my legs. Bad news, it's not covered by my health care. It's not covered by my health insurance. Good news, it's only like $14 a tube. It's this really thick, goopy ointment. Anyway, but they stocked me up on before they sent me home, they stocked me on, and they even mailed some more bandage stuff to me, a big box of it, for bandaging my legs. And so so I'm set for the immediate future. Got another doctor's visit. Got to go back there in 2 weeks. Good news. I got my Chinese flu check. My relief check. However you want to put it. Bad news, I can't deposit it. They mailed it directly to me. Now, they got this thing, and they say if you filed your returns last year, your account stuff should be online, and we'll direct deposit. And, no, they didn't. They mailed it directly to me. The bad news is I can't deposit. I could. The banks are closed, and there was no drive-through we could find. I couldn't find a drive-through, and well, what it is that I tried to cash it at Walmart. I figured, at least I'll have the cash on hand, because having all the money in the bank, you can have all the money in the world in the bank, no cash, you'll find yourself in a tight spot from time to time. So I figured, my plan was to deposit most of it, keep about $100 out in cash, and I go there. Couldn't get I couldn't get into the bank, and had no idea. There was no. The only location for the bank I knew of for my bank is downtown, and the downtown one does not have a drive-through. So, and anyway, I get to Walmart, pick up, drop off my prescriptions, get them filled. And they could not cash a check for me. Why? You see, my driver's license expired several months ago. So, almost, actually, it expired, I think, last year. Well, anyway, it expired, and I promptly lost the damn thing to boot. I have no damned idea where my expired driver's license is. So now I have to somehow, I have to arrange for transportation to go down to the DMV. They call it the BMV here. Why, I don't know. And get a state ID. Your papers, citizen. And so I have to go down there, get a state ID, so that I can either, I need a picture ID period anyway, and I've got to dig up. I've got a copy of my birth certificate on hand, so that's no problem. Get my birth certificate, get proof of my address, and proof that I live here. I have to prove to the government that I exist and that I actually live where I say I do. If I was voting Democrat, that would be no problem. But I could be a dead Mexican living on the top, buried on the top of Tibet, and they would give me a driver's license. But I've got to go through all this rigmarole. Fortunately, I know which taxi company I know. The thing of it is that I've got to wait until I've got cash on hand to pay the taxi driver. And that's going to be a few weeks, at least. And so it's going to be, it's probably going to be the end of the month or the beginning of next month before I can actually. I'm going to sit around, with this check in my hot, sweaty hands. I'm going to be just terrified at every instant. I'll be checking on its location every 5 minutes. That kind of crap. It didn't disappear, did it? And until I get it deposited. So nice little stressor added to my life. And now, I tried to call. I called and got my groceries delivered today. Upside, got my groceries, yay! And downside, a lot of the things I ordered, they are apparently out of. When I was in Walmart getting my prescriptions done, and it turns into that's another whole mess. But I went in there, and it is scary to see how bare the meat shelves, the meat department is. It's looking seriously sparse. And it's God's own guess whether that is Whether that there is an actual shortage at the moment, or things are getting sparse, or people are just panicking again. Getting actions going and buying all the meat and well, what else would you do? You find out that the meat packing plants are, going in a tailspin over this whole mess, and what are you going to do? Sit around and hope that somebody leaves you something on the shelf when you go to the grocery next week, or are you going to get in the car and go load up? You can't blame the customers for doing the only thing that makes sense for their own enlightened self-interest. But and I usually get a bag of chicken quarters, legs and thighs, because they're 50 cents a pound that way. A 10-pound bag is $5. 10-pound bag of chicken, man, that goes away, especially when you wrap it up and freeze it. But they didn't have any chicken apparently. No chicken in stock, so to speak. Ha! Chicken stock. He made a funny. But I ordered a couple of pints of ice cream. They apparently only had one. Or asked for 10 cans. I asked for some canned chicken. They didn't have any canned chicken apparently. I got the beans. I got the canned beans, but nobody got the canned chicken. And well, yeah, you get the idea. So I got to go. It's not like my shelves are getting sparse or bare or anything. I got plenty of other stuff. I'm stocked. I'm stocked. While I was at Walmart, I got myself a 10-pack of Monster Energy drink. I've also got you'll note that this is the first thing. I'm well stocked. I've got a 10-pack of Monster Energy and 5 6-packs of Dr. Pepper, and that's the first thing that I check. Do we have enough caffeine? But I'm double checking my microphone, making sure it isn't blinking. The little light is blinking. But anyway. Tried to set up an appointment with the dentist. Can't do that. For some reason, Family Tree Dentistry. I will sing their praises every time. I haven't been there in a couple of years, but every time I went in, they were fast, clean, efficient, professional, friendly, and they did a darn good job fixing up my toofers. So I figure, now that I've lost a couple of teeth and broken a couple more, I think, and one of them's starting to hurt. Actually, what's hurting is that I lost a tooth, and the socket where it was in is hurting. It's sensitive. I eat or drink anything, and it's I can punch myself in the face and I don't really feel it, but drink a glass of milk and it's like stick a battery pole in your gum line kind of second there. So I call them up and I say, I would like to set up an appointment. Do you take Molina Healthcare? Well, right now the doctors have said we're not taking any health insurance. I don't know how long either. And I'm like, why the hell would the doctors stop taking insurance? Okay, Molina Healthcare, I've had issues with them in the past as far as dental care, but basically, you have to be in, a sort of an urgent state, or they won't cover it. But I've got I've got a couple of teeth that came out. I've got a couple of missing teeth. I've got a hurting tooth, or tooth socket, and I've got a broken tooth in front. So yeah, I think we've kind of hit the strata of in need of urgent care. So I finally man up, big wussy that I am, and I call them up in Family Tree Dental here in Marietta. Salute. I went up there and I called them up rather, and they're not taking insurance, and it would have to be out of pocket, and at the moment, hey, I've got a $1,200 check that I can't deposit. So I've got all sorts of money. I just can't spend any. So it's irony of the cosmic irony time. So it's either way, it's going to be a couple of weeks before I can go in to see the dentist. So, I'm going to be seeing the doctor in a couple of weeks. You're probably going to see the dentist in a couple of weeks. Going to have to go to the DMV in a couple of weeks. And all around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. I am going to have one hell of a week at the end of this month. I haven't even. I'm thinking, initially my plan was to take that $1,200 check and just straight to the IRS, for my taxes this year. But I'm looking at it, and and then I thought about it. I should probably, straight to my landlord to catch up on my rent. And I sent I sent them a $600 payment last month, and I've got another $200 check sitting here waiting to be mailed out to them. So I'm behind, but at least they're getting money from me. So they're not gonna He's still generating revenue. We'll let him live. But the more I look at it, the more I think I'd better hang on to this $1,100 and use it for all the things that keep coming at me from left, right, up, and center. Yeah, the thing of it is that I'm already paying back rent. I'm paying back rent. I'm paying back taxes. I'm paying. And there are all these little things, so I'm thinking of just I'm holding on to the 1,200. I'm not gonna waste it. I'm not gonna waste it. I can't waste it. I can't even spend it. I can't even deposit it. But I'm going to use it, to keep. I'm going to use it basically to keep the internet connected and the electricity running. And the trash people coming out, even though I don't put anything out in the trash like I ought to be. And just to keep the doors open, keep the lights on, and do not freeze and starve in the dark. Finances. I've seen these advices. Once you have $1,000 in the bank, there is something. Here are the things you ought to do next. And I'm like, yeah. That's assuming you don't have a wolf. I don't have a wolf at the door. I have a wolf. The wolf is no longer. The wolf is not at the door for most people. It's like me. The wolf is not at the door. The wolf has been at the door so long, I finally let him in. He's sleeping on the sofa now. Drinking all the milk right out of the carton, leaves his footprints all over everything. The wolf is no longer at the door. He's my roommate. So, this big. I've done that before. A couple of years back, I did a GoFundMe where I, a Do Not Let the Artist Starve fundraiser, basically. And basically I used it to catch. I caught up entirely on my rent and taxes with that money. And it didn't take but another year before here I am again. Behind. Because I'm not generating a steady revenue. Basically because I'm not the art. I'm not the production machine I need to be. Now, I'll plead this last week because it's just been beating me up one side and down the other. Just let me put it this way. It's bad when you get back from going downtown. You go to the doctor, go to the bank and stuff, and you and you go to the pharmacy, and then you come home, and the first thing your body does when you sit down and rest is cramp. That kind of a night. But anyway, moving on. So basically what I'm saying is it's been kind of an up and down and up again and down again kind of week. Not even a major roller coaster, just one of the kiddie rides, but still up and down ride. Anyway, best laid plans of mice and men. Man plans, God laughs. It's just that this is one of the things that I read an article once that described certain things that poor people do that keep them poor, and they said one of the things when they get money in, they boom right back out again as fast as they can. And he said, the guy that wrote this column, he had been in that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle for a long time, and he said you do it because you're afraid that if you leave the money sit, it's going to disappear. It's going to fade away, and you're not going to be able to. And they said this is rather than save it up in the bank and keep it there, they tend to send it out as fast as it comes in to try and keep up with everything, and that leaves you in certain ways in as much of a lurch as if you'd never had the money at all. Life is one everlasting game of tapper. Anyway, moving on. Now there was a YouTube video I watched. It was basically a very insightful video on basically why. All of us are sitting around. We've all heard all the theories and all the arguments and all the complaints and all the rhetoric about how how companies, corporations, especially in the entertainment industry. The entertainment industry can't make a crowd-pleasing decision to save their lives anymore. Disney and Lucasfilm and all these other companies. And we're all sitting around going, why are they doing this? And I've heard a lot of things. This guy pretty much summed it up. Is basically over the years, as a company gets larger, they get taken over from the inside by people who by corporate people. And he was being serious. People whose only talent is speaking the corporate lingo. Doing things by the corporate playbook. So you got to understand that corporate thought, it's corporate culture has basically taken over most industries, and corporate culture, it's an entity unto itself. Say you remember that commercial? It was years ago. Is for some salsa. We make our salsa, with all fresh ingredients right here in Texas, and as opposed to how other companies do it. And he showed a boardroom. All these guys are sitting here at the long table. Okay, we need to vote. Are we this week? Are we going to make salsa? And some raised their hands. Or are we going to make oven mitts? And they all raise their hands. That's the thing of it. To corporate culture, to people who are who think in corporate culture, who speak the corporate lingo, who live the corporate mantra. All businesses are the same. Whether you're making salsa, oven mitts, television shows, record players, or boy bands. It doesn't matter to them. They believe corporate culture is the belief that if you go by the corporate playbook, then you can take any commodity, and that's all these things are to them. And, they're not art, they're not movies, they're commodities, they're line items. And if they, and everything is a spreadsheet, everything is a pie chart, everything is a PowerPoint presentation. And the points are interchangeable. This guy said he worked in two different. The guy that wrote this, he worked in the entertainment industry, but he's also worked in the corporate world. And he said he worked for two different major Fortune 50, not 500, Fortune 50, the top 50 companies. Two different ones. They were as he didn't tell you who they were, but he said they couldn't be more opposite. And he said if he closed his eyes at any meeting, he would not be able to tell which one he was in. Because that's how uniform they are. The problem is the people who are capable of, the people in corporate culture people, and he was speaking from experience, these people are the dullest, most boring people on earth. And he's saying this is objectively. These are people that, these are people who have never watched movies or TV shows. They've never, they've never had a favorite band, or they don't read books. They merchandise them. And he said for a description, he said he had one coworker that came up to him one day, and she gave him one of these big fake corporate grins and said, you are such a value add-on. And he said he just sat there and stared at her like a sphinx, until she shriveled up and walked away, realizing just how pathetically corporate think she had just been. But he said he had a coworker. He had years of experience in the entertainment industry. But when he was working for this one corporation, they wanted to open a department that would be in charge of merchandising, not merchandising, product placement. Where they arranged to have a can of Pepsi sitting on the counter in one movie scene, that kind of thing. Or they have billboards when they do the street, when they're filming in the street and they have the billboards up there with the various products, in the background, that kind of thing. And she was going to be in charge of product placement. And his co-worker, rather, despite the fact that he had experience in the entertainment industry, years of it, they gave it to his co-worker who sat right next to him. And to paint a picture, not 48 hours after she got this job title, she walked past his desk and asked him, "Do you know anything about Jude Law? I've never heard of that actress before." She thought Jude Law was an actress. She doesn't, and he said this was a woman, and he testified, she never went to movies, she didn't buy books, she didn't, she was, she was an unbelievably dull human being, but she knew the corporate lingo. She knew nothing about the industry she was in charge of. She was supposed to be trying to arrange, picking which product would benefit best from appearing in which movie or TV show. She knew nothing about entertainment. But the corporate bigwigs, they liked her because basically she reminded them of themselves. Basically, you have in corporations, you have when a company gets huge, like Disney, LucasArts, Henson, well, name any of them, any of the industry. Once they get past a certain point, they can become infected by corporate people because the corporate people, they get hired as the internal cogwork of the company, and their way of thinking takes over everything. And corporate culture people do not like or trust people who are creative, because corporate people are all about minimizing risk. Corporate people, as well as being dull and knowing nothing about the businesses or the products that they are in charge of making successful, and this is chronic. I'm searching for the word. I'm searching for the phrase. They are risk averse. Their entire objective is to try and take a commodity, a line item, like I said, whether it's a movie or a record or a bran muffin mix, and make it a safe, reliable, low-risk moneymaker. And people like that do not like creative people, because the definition of creativity is risk. Taking the big leap, doing something wild and innovative. And so this is why they don't. This is why they don't understand the product that they're selling. They don't like the kind of people who can make the product, and they hate the customers, because every corporation. This is word of God here. The guy said every corporation, every corporate culture person thinks that customers are stupid. This was Steve Jobs' operating principle, is that you have to tell the people what they want. And that's how they think. They think that people are just another commodity to be like a herd of sheep. And their objective is to reduce their audience to a herd of sheep. To reduce their customers to lowing cattle. And they already see them as that. They have no respect for you. They don't have any respect for your decisions, for your tastes. And he said this. He was speaking from experience, listening to corporate executives in office ranting and raving about how stupid customers were, and how they and why wouldn't the customers do what they were supposed to. And this is why we have such a crisis right now, is because the major entertainment industries forgot to keep that in-house. They forgot that they had to keep their contempt for their consumer base, you know, on the down low. It wasn't what goes on in the office stays in the office, and they forgot that. And when customers didn't go for the new Star Wars, when they didn't go for the Ghostbusters reboot, when they didn't go for the for Captain Marvel, or or any of the other box office bombs over the past 2, 3, 5 years, over the past decade, really. The entertainers, the directors, and the actors, and the CEOs, the corporate executives, came out and insulted their customers. Nobody liked Captain Marvel, so they just started calling all the men sexist who didn't go see the. If you don't see this movie, you're a sexist. Same thing with the all-female Ghostbusters reboot. Nobody liked it. It was a bomb. It wasn't funny. I've seen clips of it. It's just like it's just 4 actresses badly belaboring everything that happened in the original movie, and it's just bad. And this infuriated them, because why can't these stupid sheeple, fill those theaters like they're supposed to? And they let that spill out into the media, into the internet, and it bit them hard. Real hard. Now, this is why. Look at here. Let me break it down to you. I would love to take most of these corporate executives, all the Disney top execs that they keep firing and rehiring, all of them, and just line them up, and just short of a chronic beatdown with a 2x4. Or a solid flogging in the street, and just tell them, okay, just draw it up on a board, and as if speak to them as if to a child. The word for fan is customer. They all talked about the toxic fans. The toxic fan, I don't care what an asshole your customers are. If your customers stop coming to your store, you're going out of business. And they've forgotten this. You see, they came in there and they don't understand the product. They can't, and he said these people cannot even tell you why. If you sat these people down and asked them, why is Star Wars so popular? Why was Star Trek so popular? Why did Doctor Who do so well? Why was the Ghostbusters such a blockbuster? They couldn't tell you, because that wasn't their thing. To them, like I said, it might as well be, it could be another, bran muffin mix as far as they're concerned, or canned spam. It's all the same to them, and they have no personal stake in it. They don't understand it, and they only trust other people like themselves. So what they do is that they come in, they took over, they didn't want the customers that had kept Star Wars an operating franchise for 30, 40, 50 years. Think about it. Star Wars canceled back at what was it? When was the original Star Trek series canceled? When did it finally cancel? Like 1960, right at like 1970s? And it was the fans doing a write-in campaign that kept it on the air for an extra season. It was the fans who held conventions and made merchandise from Star Trek a profitable industry, even when there was no show for 20 or 30 years. Same story with Star Wars. People, the expanded universe stuff, was a moneymaker. Even though it was like how many decades between the end of the original trilogy and the start of the prequels? And Doctor Who, 30, 40, 50 years off, how many 20, 30, 40 years off the air? Not a single episode, and the Doctor Who fan magazine didn't miss a single issue that entire time? A monthly magazine, for crying out loud, on a show that hadn't aired in decades. And these corporate executives, they looked at that. They looked at these people who had literally poured millions of dollars into the coffers for their company, and said, "We don't want those fans. We don't want those customers." Being the totally self-oblivious dullards that they are, they wanted to bring in more people like they wanted customers who were more like themselves. Never occurring to them that the kind of customers they want weren't going to buy the product anyway. Now, right now, no cloud without a silver lining. This worldwide shutdown, this Wuhan virus crisis, quote unquote. It's yanked away their security blanket, and they're imploding. Because Disney. Disney has spent decades making, years making horrible movies and remakes and reboots and stuff nobody wanted and nobody asked for and nobody was going to watch. But they managed to get by with it because it wasn't the movies that made the money for Disney. It was the amusement parks. It was the amusement parks and the cruise lines and the resorts but suddenly, boom, those had to be shut down. Surprise! The foundation of your company has rotted out from underneath you, and you never noticed. Same story with all of them. Yes, Oren, that's the running. The secret behind running a successful business is to get people who know what you don't. The problem is that corporate culture is not about. Corporate culture is basically the tapeworm. In the body corporate. A corporation can survive anything except developing a corporate culture. Corporate think it basically is what happens when you have a huge infrastructure, and the people in the middle of the infrastructure, the vast majority, the vast lion's share of the infrastructure forgets its origin and becomes more concerned with maintaining itself than with maintaining the company, which it now is a parasite of. It's basically the problem with a bureaucracy. Once a bureaucracy is established, it's self-sustaining. It no longer needs to actually, it only needs the bare minimum to do the bare minimum to keep the wheels turning, and the rest of it is just self-involvement. You take any government bureaucracy, any branch of the unelected teeming masses that infect the body politic. They're all concerned about making sure, looking after themselves and getting their own. Doing the job is a coincidental annoyance for them. And with a corporation, you have the same problem. The company's gotten so big that all the people in the middle, you know, all the people, in the middle between the customers and between between the customers and the people that actually do the creative work, they are more self-involved with maintaining their own office politics. They're more obsessed with the office politics. Office politics is their only talent. Let me put it this way: the only have you ever heard the phrase corporate presence? This man has a real corporate presence. It's a way of these self-involved corporate culture people to say that they think this guy is like themselves, and they feel comfortable, propping him up to stand next to one of their higher ups. It's an it's a virtue they fabricated out of thin air because they didn't have any others. Corporate presence, the only attribute they have, and they had to make it up. Now, this does bring up the big question. Now you look at the disaster, particularly in the entertainment industry, that has, like I said before, these corporations, Disney, Lucas, Henson, and MGM Studios, all these huge companies that made their fortunes, generating things that became part of our culture, that pleased audiences for hundreds, in some cases for over a century. But the thing of it is now they can't seem to make a audience pleasing decision to save their lives. And what's more is that they keep regurgitating this. This is the puzzling thing. Their audience displeasing behavior always leans to the left. Have you noticed that? Once in like an insane blue moon, somebody will come along and do something that is explicitly quote unquote right wing, conservative. Conservative, Judeo-Christian, so on and so forth. What was the name of that Hollywood guy? The Passion of the Christ. You remember when that came out? I remember when that came out. It was an earth shaker. And the usual suspects, just got all squealy and upset over it. But it still was a pretty big hit with those on the right and in Christian conservative circles. And then there was the movie God Is Not Dead, a minor movie, but it was still a hit. Well, you'd call it a cult hit. But you look over here, and the mainstream Hollywood, they tried to make a movie about Noah, and they pissed everybody off. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. It was awful. And they go out there, you hand them a franchise. You handed them, every time you handed the corporations a golden goose. A goose that laid the golden eggs. It's like they turned around and started looking for the hollandaise sauce immediately. They've had these so-called talented directors that they gave the Star Wars franchise to, openly admitting that they had no interest in preserving the canon of the Star Wars universe, and they were just going to make their movie and screw the fans, screw the people that were actually going to buy tickets. That's not how you run a business, folks. Pardon, but and they stuffed it. What did they stuff it full of? Social justice warrior bullcrap. And they had everything from leftist socialist bashing right out of the Karl Marx playbook to just ridiculous feminazi bullshit, and it was just awful. It was, and it was, and it says something that the least awful of the 3 sequel movies was the first one, which was basically nothing more than a reskinned version of the original Star Wars movie. Giant, evil empire with giant death ray battleship, and plucky starfighters blow it up from inside, you know. Evil villain kills his father figure, big no scene, no, and the whole 9 yards. It was plot point by plot point, just a bad remake of the original Star Wars movie, and that was the best that could be said for it. But again, the entire trilogy was packed with feminist and leftist drivel. The Ghostbusters remake was packed end to end. It was nothing but a leftist chick tract. And what's more is that in both Star Wars and they went on the attack. How dare how dare you say this movie is bad, which it was. You're just a sexist. You're just a sexist, homophobic, Islamo, racist. We'll think of something else to call you in a minute. And that bimbo that took over Star Wars running around, the Force is female, on a T-shirt, and it became a thing for every female crew member to be on the movies to be wearing that T-shirt running around. The Force is female. It wasn't a Star Wars movie. It was an NOW recruitment poster. That's why it just awful. But it was always leftist. Now you think about it. How unusual that is. Think about it. The thing that is killing our industry is that killing our cultural industry. That's killing our companies and our businesses in this country is and especially in the entertainment industry is, like I said, corporate culture. This parasitic coffee clutch that grows up inside a corporation as it gets bigger, like a tapeworm, and it eventually kills the host, and then all the little members run off and become corporate moguls in other companies and corporations. But you'd think that of all things, corporate culture is about maximizing profits with minimal risk, and staying away from that icky, scary creativity. You would figure that they would be erring on the right-wing side. You'd think that instead of offending, just everybody with their, by packing all their products with leftist glurge, they would be offending people in the opposite direction. Every movie would be bald eagles and bullets and beer. But no. Everything they do is just marinated in leftist think. And you're like, and your first thought is, my first thought is, how did this happen? How on earth did it reach a point where corporate culture started seeing leftist thought as the go-to answer for easy and reliable profits. I had to think about that for a while, and it dawned on me. You know why? Let me put it. Why would anybody think that pandering to anti-capitalist leftists and unpleasable feminists was the answer to corporate profit margins, and the answer is as obvious as a Che Guevara T-shirt. Most people are the corporate culture has been for decades has been marketing leftist thought. Repackaging leftism and selling repackaging leftism and selling it back to them. Che Guevara T-shirts, Guy Fawkes masks for the Vias Vendetta crowd. Did you know that Woodstock, the original Woodstock, everybody talks about how the Woodstock redo a couple of decades ago was just a cheap corporate money grab. Hey, guess what? That's what the original Woodstock was too. It was the original Woodstock concert was planned by the record companies. Most people don't know that. It's just that so many people showed up that they, eventually they completely lost control of things. Can you dig it? Ever since the 50s and 60s, these big companies have been reliably reselling, repackaging, and regurgitating, reselling, repackaging, and reselling leftist pop culture to itself. So why shouldn't they think that they could take these toxic feminists and their ranting ideology and these modern day teenage hoodied fascist rhetoric and box it back up and sell it like any other product? They'd already done it to the boomers. They don't. It's just that these corporations, these corporate culture didn't realize that the leftist rhetoric had become so toxic. It's become so caustic that it eats through whatever package they wrap it up in. It's come to full fruition, and it's no longer something that they can repackage as freedom or free spirits or nostalgia or whatever they were selling the hippie movement as. And you got to realize the hippie movement, the hippie movement of the '60s, they're nasty. I mean, they were awful. We're talking, just rampant, of course, rampant drug use, sexual promiscuity and what's more, is most people don't realize is that you better be thankful there's no such thing as smell-o-vision, because hippies considered it a thing to never bathe. I'm not lying. I'm not making it up. My parents talked about it. You'd be downwind of a hippie for more than a block, and you knew it. They stank. They were filthy. They were filthy-minded, filthy-mouthed, filthy-bodied, and they were violent. Everybody likes to point to Kent State. Oh, the brutality of the military. I'm sorry. Those guards were opening fire in defense of their lives because they had a mob, a rampaging mob of rioters bearing down on them, throwing bricks and rocks, and waving 2x4s around. It was, it was violent city, and they started by firing over the kids' heads, and when they didn't disperse, they lowered their aim a little. And it wasn't, what a surprise. Shortly after Kent State, the whole brave hippie revolution movement just sort of faded away. It's great to talk about a crusade, but when the bullets start flying and the shit hits the fan, that's where you see where the nonsense is. I got one kid, one of these Antifa jackasses. They filmed him. He was out in black kid. He's wearing the hoodie and the mask, and ranting and raving and yelling, and out comes his mama. She came up the road, just went after him, just slapping him upside the head, pat, 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 just dragged him by his shirt off down the road. Hail the brave hero of the revolution. If we just had more mamas like that, we wouldn't have to put up with his nonsense from them. Anyway, it's the disasters that have been happening to the entertainment industry. They could put up with a certain degree of mediocrity. It's only 90% everything is crap. We know that. The problem is they were shooting for a full 100%. You can only stand so much mediocrity, so much toxic worldview before you just back up, puke it back up. And the corporations, they think, the corporate culture thought they had the new toxic feminism and the caustic leftism and the Antifa and all and the LGBTQ XYZ BBQ ABC, they thought they had it on a leash. Whoopsie doodle. I'm going to say this, Ayn Rand, a provocative thinker, not a very good writer. She's Russian. She was Russian, and English was her second language. And, if you've ever read Russian literature, you know what I'm talking about. Just heavy-going, thick as treacle, even translated to English, but and her roots were showing when she wrote Atlas Shrugged. And she had some gaps in her world philosophy. People mock conservatives and capitalists and right-wingers. They mock us for believing in, they mock us for believing in rationalism. I've lost count of the number of people I've read say you're fooling yourselves. People aren't rational. And and you're foolish for expecting them to be motivated. But no, they don't understand. They don't understand. We don't, conservatives and right wingers. We don't expect people to be rational. We don't. We do expect that those who behave in an irrational fashion will have the consequences boomerang back on them. That's the fundamental difference. We believe in rationality on the grounds that we've seen what everything else has been tried and what happens then. We don't expect anybody to naturally act perfectly rational, which is why we believe that conservatism, right-wing conservatism, needs to be taught at every opportunity, because I'm sorry. Rationalism is like gravity. You can rebel against gravity all you want. You could ignore it. You can pretend it doesn't exist. You can get mad and say, I won't do anything that gravity tells me to do. And you jump off a cliff, gravity's going to have the last word. Rationalism is the same way. It's not about the belief that people will act in their own most logical, enlightened self-interest. It's the belief that that's the way the wind blows, in the direction of logic. And whether or not they do it for rational reasons, people are going to be steered in the direction of logic just by the events and circumstances around them. I believe in rationality the same way I believe in gravity. I can get along day by day without thinking about it constantly. So can everybody else. I know that if I trip, gravity's going to have the last word. You'll have to excuse me. Like I said, it's been a long day. It's been a long day. It was a long night last night too, and it was a long day before that. And so I'm a little, drag butt today. Probably gonna sneak off and lie down in bed in another hour or so. I've done a little writing, but only like a couple of paragraphs in each of my stories, and still need to sit down and just start drawing and draw something. But at least for now, for the next couple of weeks, everything seems squared away. I hope. I've got roast beef, sliced roast beef in the fridge. I'm gonna have sandwiches. Yummy nums. It's this sliced roast beef with the A1 steak sauce. Yummy, yummy, yummy. And, focusing. Trying to focus. Recently, speaking of, speaking of pastimes, for years, I've had World of Warcraft on and off. I've had the game on my computer. I just don't have an account every month. But this month I got an account, and I have to say that I finally started playing a few characters on the Horde side. Now, I don't like playing on the Hordes. I don't like the fact that if I want to play a Volparen, I have to play Horde, because I don't want to play the bad guys. It's that simple, and the Horde are the bad guys, no matter how you dice it. I finally got Volparen characters, and I sat down. I started playing Horde Volparen, and and it's interesting. See, the thing of it is that all these people that talk about, oh well, it's ambiguous. I always thought you could blame the people that say, oh, the Horde and the Alliance are ambiguous. I always thought you could blame that on the fact that they probably had a Horde character, and they saw the different lore on this, and I watched it, and I've been playing it, and no, even playing as a Horde character, you are fully enlightened to the fact that you are working with dicks. Pardon my language, but that's the truth. You are made expressly clear to you that the Horde, through all the expansions and everything, is run and controlled by violent warmongers, slavers, and worse. One of my characters, I finally got him up to the Mists of Pandaria. Now, as you know, the Mists of Pandaria was the expansion where, first of all, a Pandaren character, after it hits a certain level, can choose whether it's going to be a Horde. You can choose whether he's going to be Horde or Alliance. It's the only race that can do that, and I'm like, dang it! The one good idea they finally come up with, and they refuse to use it on any of the other races. I'm like, you jerks. And but anyway, the Pandarans, the Mists of Pandaria, tries to portray the Pandarans as this neutral faction, and the Alliance and the Horde both arrive, and and it's the fault of the Alliance and the Horde that the land becomes torn by war, and so it's and the Alliance is as much at fault as no, it's not. You have to be willingly dumber than a brick sandwich to think, or to look at the lore from either side. You watch the clips and and everything, and no, it's unambiguous. The Horde arrived in Pandaria intending to conquer it and paint it red with blood, in the words of their leaders. I'm sorry, there's no way to dodge around it. And your respect for my respect for the Pandarans as a people is just straight down, because throughout the entire expansion, the Pandarans. Leaders, the Shadow Pandaren, acting like the Alliance is just as bad as the Horde, and still, pandering to both sides. And I'm like, you jackass! The Alliance arrived offering peace, the Horde arrived, started blowing shit up, and kidnapped a bunch of your children. That's one of the opening missions. At least, I'm like, you doink, how willfully, morally dysfunctional do you have to be to believe that a peace-seeking faction and a child kidnapping faction are morally equivalent? How did I go with that story, My Life as a Bipedal Quadruped? I haven't finished reading it yet. I've gotten up to the part where she gets, where she goes to the mirror universe, and I sort of haven't read more, beyond that, not yet. So. Anyway, I'll say this much: this new expansion, though, it looks like they're finally going to start shaking things up a little bit. Explaining basically, what's her name? The Banshee Queen. Basically, in the last expansion, Battle for Azeroth, the Banshee Queen, who was the war leader, who had become. The Banshee Queen is the leader of the Forsaken, the undead faction, and she became the war chieftain of the Horde. She basically became head honcho, and she went completely off the frickin' rails. She burned down one of the world trees, just for starters. And then she proceeded to lose battle after battle, and finally lost the city, the undead city of Lordaeron. She even bombed her own people with the Blight. And basically, Battle for Azeroth ends with her getting the boot. And the new expansion, the Shadowlands, is going to be starting out that the Horde is now, instead of having one war chief, they will have, there'll be a committee. I can't think of the term. From each of the Horde races. Each of the chieftains of the Horde races will come together and form a. I can't think of the term. Brain fall down, go boom. And the Horde is and this Horde is really, oh yeah, okay, this is it. We have we've finally gone too far. We're going to have to change things. So I can accept it. I can more accept it. They're finally reaching a point where the Horde as a whole is going. We have sins in our past we have to make up for. That a moment of this is their road to Damascus moment, their moment of repentance, where they realize that they have let they finally reached a point where they let a crazy undead Banshee Queen dang near destroy the world, and they nearly followed her off the cliff with her. They nearly ran off the cliff after her, and they said, this has got to change. So, moving on to the future. I expect them to totally screw it up later, but it's something. And interesting, they're going to be doing a big level squish for the next expansion. What I mean by, if you don't know, it's right now you can go from a level. Your character starts out as level 1 and goes all the way up to level 120. When the new Shadowlands expansion starts out, all those levels are going to be squished, and Your level 120 character will be reduced to level 50. They won't. They'll be. They won't be dropped. They'll be. They'll sort of smash it down like a Dagwood sandwich. And you will be able. From there on, you will be able to scale your character up in any of the zones from 1 to 50. And once you reach level 50, you'll be able to go into the Shadowlands, where you'll be able to go from 50 to 60. Yeah. So, they're sort of mashing it down and spreading it out. It used to be that to go from level 1 to 120, you had to, level up through each of the different zones. You had to do a few levels in, you had to do several levels in Cataclysm, then you had to do several levels in Northrend, then you had to do several levels in Pandaria, then you had to do several levels in the Outland, and several levels, it got to be a drag. Now you get it's they're shortening the decision tree, giving it more branches right at the start, so to speak. Anyway, they're going to have factions. They're going to have. I'm so looking forward to the new expansion. Yay! The small business die-off is here. Oh, well, no shit, Sherlock. I'm looking at these headlines here. Good grief. Okay, I still say that what happened with the coronavirus is necessary. To a certain extent, necessary. Silver cloud, clouds, silver lining, etc. Because among the things that's happened is that a lot of companies that were coasting, a lot of companies, especially the big corporations, Disney being one of the first, Disney, Marvel, that were coasting along, letting the corporate culture, guide them every step of the way. Even as they turned our cultural landscape into a prairie fire. They got the rug yanked out from under them, and now it's going to be sink or swim. And the downside is that a lot of these small businesses are taking it in the chops. It's making me really mad, because you get a lot of people out there. You point out this. Oh, you just want to go out and watch a movie and have a haircut. These people love being afraid. They love being terrified. They love having the government come in and pat them on the head and say, "You do this, 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 and this, and we'll keep you safe." Even though if they exercise their brains, they would realize that this isn't working. Let's put it this way: they got this. This is from New York, okay? So I don't know if they've done the entire country, but conclusion, where the vast majority of coronavirus cases are coming from? The vast majority of coronavirus cases, 66% of them, are coming from people who have been living, sheltered in place. The shut down and the shut in. That tells 66%, and the rest is divided up between the elderly, people in hospitals, people in senior citizen centers, people in workplace essential workers, so to speak. That the other 34% is divided up between 5 or 6 different sources. 66% of the cases are people that have been closed up, locked up, quarantining themselves, and never going out without a mask on, for more than 5 minutes. That tells you right there, this lockdown is not working. It's not working at all. And what's more is that it's coming out that governments are, doctors are coming out and admitting, the government officials are coming in and pushing them, to label deaths as being coronavirus caused. And one doctor said, no, it wasn't coronavirus. It was 50 years of smoking that did this guy in. And the people, not even testing these people, the dead people for the virus. They're just assumed to have, and there are people who are trying to make it look like there are more coronavirus cases than there actually are. Because this situation gives them control, authority, and power. And these people don't get. You can't shut an entire country down like this. This approach is not working. It's typical of I don't know why Trump went with it. Probably because he flat out said, I don't know nothing about no coronaviruses, and listened entirely to advisors. But you can't shut down a country like this without causing irreparable harm. And it's like every other leftist idea. What have I said before? What are the four attributes of a leftist idea? We tried it before; it didn't work. It cost a fortune and it killed people. We tried it before; it did not work. It cost a fortune and it killed people. You got it's. Even now, after all this time, the deaths worldwide are less than what we lose every year to flu. And the people that are dying are people who had comorbidities. In other words, they had other underlying conditions that were liable to kill them anyway. 99.5% of the people who catch the virus are going to be perfectly fine. It's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be horrible. It's a horrible, being sick even with the mildest flu is monstrously awful. But it is well within our capacity to deal with, and we are dealing with it in the absolutely wrong fashion, in the way that is guaranteed to cause the most harm and do the least good. You just want to get a haircut? No. And there's this woman saying, no, I want to give people haircuts so that I can make money and pay to feed my children. You assholes. Yeah, they had a woman. She kept her hair salon open. And they were wearing gloves, wearing masks. Not good enough. They shut her down, and she stayed open. And they threw her in jail, and they were going to keep her there for a week. Make sure she caught the disease from one of the inmates. That's what she was looking for. But the Supreme Court, let her out. They lost. can't do things this way. Look, the people who the people have been saying this. Other countries have done it this way, and they have a lower death rate than we do. Where simple, let everybody go about their day-to-day business. Quarantine those who are at risk. I've said this before. Isn't it interesting? We've had all sorts of horrible diseases tear through this country. SARS, the swine flu, the mad cow disease, and all these other diseases that came along, and some real serious ones. I mean, think about the AIDS virus. The AIDS virus. We're talking about the AIDS virus. We're talking about a disease that is still 100% incurable. Incurable. 100% terminal, spread by bodily fluids, and I do not need to tell you which ones. And our government wouldn't even give it the same consideration that we gave to chicken pox. And result in billions of people dead because we refuse to treat it like a lethal, contagious disease. Now along comes something that's the equivalent of a really unpleasant and fast-spreading version of the flu, and the whole country shuts down. The whole world shuts down. And people start going out of business. People have started losing their jobs. People have started losing their homes. We're starting to see actual shortages hitting the market. And this is my theory. Who runs our country? Who runs our country? Boomers. 60-plus-year-old people. The entire country is run by people who are 60 years old and older. And what a surprise. Suddenly a virus comes out that is a threat to who? 60-year-olds with comorbidities. And what a 60-year-olds and people with comorbidities. What a surprise. The government's, our lords and masters, shut the country down. Shut the country down. They don't give a rat's ass about us. All of a sudden, the people that these boomers bastards look down on, the unskilled labor, are suddenly essential workers. Why don't you start calling the rest of us what you really think? Expendables. I've gotten off on that track before too. Sorry if I'm a drag. But the crisis is ongoing, and so my annoyance is perpetual. Because this whole shutdown has become a dream come true for petty Niedermeyers. The world over. You've got cops running around arresting people for taking their children out to the park. How much of a raisin dick do you have to be to think, well, it's the law, here's my badge, and I can do what I want, I remember seeing that video of that one guy jogging along the beach, nobody within 100 yards of him, all by his lonesome, and here comes a cop, and he's running after the guy, and the jogger just looks back and kicks it into high gear and just takes off, and the cop, hold, police, and he gives up about halfway and just laughed my ass off of that jackass. You gotta be a complete. This is what I'm talking about. We disparaged those who complained about police excesses. Largely because they made it a race issue. Every time somebody caught a bullet, the black community would come out in the street and tried to make he's racist, but we kind of overlooked the fact that police brutality is a thing. And there's some nasty thing, and there's some nasty things. One of the things that some crooked cops like to do is they keep a sewing pin, in the palm of their hand, between the fingers. At the point of they keep it so that when they pat a suspect down, they can jab them with a pin. The suspect will jump and probably get upset. And that gives them an excuse to administer a beatdown. One of the fun little things that cops like to do to pass the time. I'm sorry. All respect to the men in law enforcement, to the men who enforce the law and protect the Constitution, and all respect to soldiers who defend this country, but I'm not blind either. I am damned well aware that being a police officer is a position of power and authority, and that attracts a lot of people who love to abuse power, even if it's just petty. Those are the people that make life hell on earth for everybody else. These bureaucrats who are writing all these ridiculous laws are making things a nightmare for everybody. But it's the beat cop who's going out there handcuffing somebody for playing catch in a public park with his little girl. On the ground, we're keeping you safe from the virus. He's an asshat. It's that guy. It's where the rubber meets the road. It's where the enforcement of the law hits the street. That's where the problem starts. That's where that's where the rubber meets the road. This is why we have such strict controls on power in our Constitution and in our laws, because the abuse, the potential for abuse on a scales great and small is so tempting, especially to people of a certain demeanor. There are people that get badges because they want to protect society, but there are still a bunch of people who are Niedermeyers. Look that up if you don't know what I mean. People are nasty, petty, vicious little bitches, nasty little chihuahuas, little rat dogs, who delight in yapping and snapping and tormenting better people than themselves, because it compensates them for the fact that they're born with a dick the size of a microscopic It's just, excuse me. you know, these quarantine laws, these quarantine regulations are basically a huge blank check for petty tyrants anywhere in uniform. People that whose only happiness comes from being as small and mean and petty as they possibly can. That cop, you were probably shook his hand anywhere else, but there he was. He was out there trying to chase a man down and arrest him and haul him off to jail for jogging in public. Not even within 100 yards of another human being. There have been cops out there arresting people for sitting out on their own front porch or sitting up on their own rooftop. They enjoy the power. The petty power. I wouldn't want to get in politics. I don't care how dumb the ones that are in there are. I would not want to. Because the vast majority of being in government power consists of knowing how to control people who don't want to do their job right and who want to blame you for when things go wrong. Mm. Uh, I don't know why I'm so addicted to this. I don't know if you've ever heard it. It's called Quora, Quora, Quora.com. And it's basically where people ask questions and random people give answers, and they actually vote the answers up or down. You know. And most of the questions, most of the questions are just deliberately provocative. Here's an example. Question: are right-wing Republicans holding the country back with their views on science? You can give it, and there's a little button so you can give an answer. A lot of, I'll be fair. A lot of questions, are like, benign ones like who is the best non-human character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or what have you noticed in Marvel movies that most people have not? That kind of thing. Uh, but still, a lot of them are political, and I'm looking at Core, and it strikes me that this whole voting system, you could argue it's deliberate, you could argue it's unconscious, but it boils down to a system that conditions people to try and make answers that everybody will agree with. Because the more if you give a really good sounding answer, a lot of people will give it a thumbs up. The more thumbs up you get, the higher your answer is rated. So, like, yeah, it's not exactly a hotbed of objective thought, if you know what I'm saying. But it also is more or less an excuse for having red hot arguments with complete strangers about completely petty stuff. You'll have people that, anyway. Uh, these people keep posting questions. Here's one that's sort of getting on my nerves. What movie did you find out that Snape was actually a good guy? Okay, first of all, the movies are a bad Hermione Granger fan fiction. I enjoyed I enjoyed most of the movies. The last couple of ones were just bleh. Of course, the last book was kind of bleh, but I just think that I think that J.K. Rowling lost the spark, as it were. She became more, as time went by, she became more and more interested. I mean, she wasn't even finished writing the books when the movies started, and it showed. She probably got more anxious as she went along, making sure that trying to make sure that her book appealed to all the right people. And again, we see an example of corporate culture. You had this big franchise, this big company that was making a movie franchise out of her product, and you guarantee you that they had, offices and meetings and, corporate bigwigs coming in and giving her all sorts of advice, kind of stuff. But I've pointed this out before, and no, Snape was not a good guy, and his quote unquote redemption arc was one of the most in the very last book was just one of the most infuriating things about the entire series. Because let's put it this way, if it had been Neville rather than Harry, Snape would still be a Death Eater. See, Snape was perfectly fine with the racist rhetoric. That's why he jumped on board the Death Eaters in the first place. He was perfectly fine with the fact that he was joining a bunch of terrorists. The rape and the murder and the arson and everything else that they did. And I guarantee you, this is, hate to break it to you, but you join an organization like that, one of the first things they do is initiate you by having you do something absolutely horrible so you can't back out again. So he probably has at least the murder of at least one innocent person, on his hands by the start of the books. But if it had been Neville, he didn't care. He was fine. He was fine with the reasons. He was fine with all the dark magic they were throwing around. He was fine with all the murder and rape and arson and violence that the Death Eaters were doing, and probably participated in it himself. And hey, he found out that his boss was going to go out and kill a baby. No big deal. He only balked when he found out that the girl he coveted since high school was going to be in the way and probably going to die too. And no, I did not misspeak. He did not love her. He obsessed over her. He coveted her. He wanted her for himself. He thought, he thought that because, he thought because he was the first one to meet her when he was a child, that he knew her from being that he was entitled to her, and he was obsessed with her. And even after he was married, he that was the grounds he went to Voldemort. Will you spare the woman? Because that was the ground. He basically asked Voldemort to reward him by giving the woman to him. He didn't care that James was going to die or that little Harry was going to die. And how and don't give me this bullcrap about how deeply he loved Lily. Hate to break it to you, he didn't care, because is this how you act? You bully and torment the orphan child of the woman you once loved? Is that how you show love? This man spent all those years running around with murderers and human monsters, and then balked at the last second when he was going to lose his obsession fetish, and tried to play both sides against the middle. Because he went to Voldemort and asked he went to Voldemort and to Dumbledore, trying to get trying to save Lily for himself. And when that failed, he spent the next 17 years as a teacher at Hogwarts, sadistically bullying his own students, especially the orphaned children, of the Longbottoms and the Potters. Harry Potter, the son of the woman he claimed to love, and he tormented the kid because he looked too much like his dad. That's love? No. Snape was human shit. I've got arguments that the man was never on the side on Dumbledore's side at all. I think that Dumbledore arm twisted him into making a magical oath that bound him from doing anything too overt. But even then, okay, recall when in the Order of the Phoenix, when Harry found, Voldemort convinced Harry that he had Sirius captive and was torturing him, and Harry and he was torturing him at the Hall of Prophecies, where all those glass spheres were, and Harry told Snape. He passed the word on to Snape. That Voldemort was at he was in the. He basically told him what Voldemort was up to, and then Harry escaped from Umbridge, and he and his friends flew on Thestral back all the way from Scotland to London. Now, you may not know this, but even by airplane, that's a 4-hour trip. Just go, well, maybe not 4 hours, but by plane. But going, even if you were going 100 miles an hour, it would be at least 4 hours to get there. Harry and his friends got to the Ministry, sneaked in, battled the Death Eaters up and down through the Unspeakable's laboratories, and only then, at the very end, did the Order of the Phoenix finally show up. Snape somehow managed to wait 4 hours before sending word to the other members of the Order of the Phoenix. That tells me that Snape decided to wait as absolutely long as he possibly could in the hopes that Sirius and Harry would get killed. And here's the thing, everybody talks about, oh, it's so horrible. Sirius tried to feed Snape to a werewolf. No, he didn't. In Snape's worst memory, he recalled, Lily pointed out that, okay, first off, you have to understand, again, he was already an aspiring Death Eater. He knew more dark magic than most seventh years did when he first got to school. He invented his own spell, Sectum Sempra, which was basically like throwing a bag of razor blades at somebody's head. And it was his favorite spell. He was known for using it. His response when James tried to, buttonhole him after in that worst memory, is he turned around and fired a cutting spell at James's head, sliced open his cheek. If he had been an inch closer, he would have blinded him or maybe even killed him. This, he was basically the creep. Snape was basically the creepy, neo-Nazi skinhead kid who sat in the back of the class playing with a switchblade. And of course he thought of himself as the noble suffering Keats, but but he already, even before he spoke to Sirius, he already suspected Remus of being a werewolf. Because Lily said, I already know your theory about what Remus is, and I don't want to hear anymore. He already knew. He already knew that Remus was a werewolf. He was just looking for proof. And think about this. Yeah, Sirius told him, if you go to, if you poke that, the knot on the Whopping Willow, a secret door will open, then you can go see. Sirius did not force Snape to go out there. He certainly didn't force him to go out on a full moon night, alone, with nothing but a wand to defend himself with. That's Darwin Award material. I'm gonna go prove my classmate is a werewolf. Is the moon full yet? What I figure is that Snape, think about it, Snape and Sirius hated each other's guts. Can you imagine going up to the worst? You remember your worst schoolyard bully? Remember your worst bully at school? Can you imagine going up to Can you imagine yourself going up to that bully, asking them some information, and then believing them and taking their advice? Never in a billion years. But Snape does that. I'm like, Darwin Award. And I figure, I figure what Sirius did was, oh yeah, just go find that secret door and you'll see for sure. And he probably told him that because he figured that even Snape, there was no way Snape would be stupid enough to do it. Now, what a surprise, Snape was. And here's a real kicker. Here's something to ponder. Snape was probably planning on killing Remus. Now, you look at how in the books about how they describe how werewolves are treated in magical Great Britain, and what do you figure that there was? What do you figure it was perfectly legal to kill a transformed werewolf? Strictly on the grounds that it would be so. He was going to go out there. He was waiting to the full moon. He was going to corner Remus. He didn't take out a camera. He took his wand. He was planning on, he was probably figuring that he could kill Remus and then pass himself off as a dark monster slaying hero for doing it. When all the Snape fairies are like, oh, he would have never done that. You're misinterpreting it. Blah, 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 blah. What's your explanation for why he went out there? He went out on a full moon night after somebody he thought was a werewolf. The phrase bear hunting with a switch comes to mind. But his intentions were anything but benevolent. At the very least, he was looking for proof in order to try and get Remus expelled. In fact, when Dumbledore hired Remus as a teacher, think about it. Snape went out of his way to, he never told anything, but he deliberately dropped hints all over the frickin' place for everybody to pick up. An entire class in the dark arts on werewolves and the signs of somebody with lycanthropy, and he basically did his level best to get a man with an incurable, a disabled man who had no money, no home, and an incurable disease. He tried to get him fired and thrown out on the street. Snape was a shit. I'm sorry. Snape, if Snape was a spy, he was the shittiest spy ever. In our latest update, Voldemort crucioed several of his helpers, and Lucius Malfoy is still a wanker. Yeah, my explanation of him puts a picture of Eraserhead from My Hero Academia. I'll be on. Okay, I'll admit there's some parallels. Okay, there are some parallels in my descriptions of Snape and of Eraserhead because, well, I'm sorry, but both of them are terrible teachers. Snape, Eraserhead is a bad teacher. Snape is a horrible one, but you know, as far as that goes, Snape was an actively malevolent teacher. In any real school, somebody who abused a student the way he abused Harry on his very first day, basically he would have been thrown out the front door with such force he would have bounced twice before coming to a halt. Oh, mercy, yes. There are plenty of Darwin Awards to hand out in the wizarding world. But, okay. But, getting back to this, Aizawa, Eraserhead from My Hero Academia, my grounds, he's a bad teacher. And everybody says that I demonized him in my stories. Oh, well, maybe a little. I went to the, I pushed it a little bit, but it didn't really take much pushing. I'm sorry, the man, from the first time I saw him, I was like, okay, he looks like he looks like Russell Brand with a hangover, but he comes in there, he comes in there, he's half asleep, he doesn't give a rat's ass about his class or about his personal appearance. Sits down and basically threatens to, just, the very first thing he does on the very first day is that he passes up, all the assemblies and every other, all the other official things that they're supposed to be doing for the first day, takes them out and gives them a physical test, a physical aptitude test. And then, just to be, a bitch about it, because, the kids are like, wow, we're finally going to get to use our powers, unrestricted, this is great. And just to be a bitch about it, he tells them that he's going to expel the one who does the worst. These kids passed what had to be a rigorous written test to get in, and then they passed the physical test, the practical exam with the combat robots. They literally risked their own hides to get through the front door. Some of them grievously injured themselves just to make it through the front door. They already proved their mettle. And this, Night of the Living Undead Mother is standing there telling them that he's going to expel one of them based on how they throw a ball. Before, no lessons, before any lessons, before anything else, he's going to use his own personal, arbitrary, petty decision-making as a classroom teacher, not even as a school administrator or a principal or a member of the board of education. He's just a school teacher. But he's going to throw one of them out. And he expelled an entire class in a previous year. Now, in a recent manga edition, it's revealed that he went back and said, "Okay, you can come back," and he signed them back up. But too bad, it also noted that despite them being able to come back to class, it went back on their, that mark went on their permanent record. And remember, UA is a high school, not a college. That is, that mark, especially in Japan, would follow them the rest of their lives. He's still a dick. And let me put it this way: I pointed out this. Can you imagine that? To have gone through everything, especially in the case of Izuku, what he went through just to pass that practical exam. I mean, he shattered the bones in his arm and legs. And and this sloppy ass mother is going to stand there and tell him he's not worthy to be a hero. Some people, they're like slinkies, not useful for anything, but so much fun to push down flights of stairs. Uh, that flew all over me. Like, who the hell are you? You're a bottom-rated, uh, you know, midnight stalking hero whose only talent is the ability to turn off other people's powers. That's handy for backstab attacks, but other than that, you're as useless as a tits on a boar. And you're going to judge other people on whether they're worthy to be a hero based on how they perform in a physical aptitude test that does not test their powers. It was meant for a practical physical exam, standardized for normal people. Anyway, I instantly disliked Aizawa from that moment on. Because he was obviously not trying to teach. He was just trying to find he was just there, to coast along and find whatever excuse he could to expel students he didn't like. And I figured, and it's fairly obvious that the reason he didn't is because he had been forbidden to. Because can you imagine the upheaval? Think about it. These kids, this school puts out pro heroes. Basically, one of the cornerstones of of their society's law enforcement, their national security, their disaster response capability. There's a lot. Those are a lot of pillars. For the heroes that heroes support, and he basically guaranteed that there would be, that half of an entire year's worth of students, just poof, gone. Can you imagine the uproar? I looked at it and I said, "There's no way that he got away with doing that without getting his ears twisted off by the staff, by the principal, by the So so that's the way that's why I wrote him the way I did in Coyote, because this guy, uh, uh, this had to be he doing that so frivolously, expelling a bunch of students like that, had to just pop open the can of worms, like forget opening a can of worms. You remember those cans of peanuts that you'd open up and spring snakes would pop out. That's the picture I'm looking at. Oh yeah, I've heard you say that before. That the author ripped off that moment from Naruto while forgetting Kakashi was testing 12-year-old military. He was testing 12-year-old secret ops would probably be a better example. Just saying military, not quite. 12-year-old secret ops assassins. I'm saying secret ops to be nice because they're not ninjas, not nice people. But yeah, and police academy students saying that they were the equivalent of police academy students, the heroes in My Hero. No, that doesn't quite cover the. Yeah, they're a keystone part of their society's law enforcement, but they are also a key part of their, like I said, of their emergency they're first responders in every scenario, and in scenarios that a government couldn't possibly prepare for. I mean, you can have a fire department and you can have a fire department and an ambulance crew and a police department and and so on and so forth. You can have people who are trained to respond to earthquakes and things, but and natural disasters, but nobody's prepared for the flying saucer invaders, so to speak, or the giant monster that wades ashore, or the supervillain with the death ray and that kind of the heroes are there. The pro heroes in My Hero Academia are more than just law enforcement. They are they cover a wide palette, I guess you'd say. Now, for arbitrary testing, yeah, sky high. I saw that and I was like, that was the whole point of it, is that they were being deliberate about it, that the school was unfair. Because high school's unfair. That sort of bugs me too, is that they were trying to make a joke out of the fact that high school's unfair. And that's just the way it is. That's kind of horrible, actually. The idea that we know that high school is dysfunctional and poorly run and unfair and arbitrary, and the people running it got their heads up their asses, and the students and the beautiful people running the student body are horrible behind closed, and we've just it becomes a joke about how we just shrug and go, whatever. And I'm like, no, that's awful. That's awful. That's really awful. But yeah, the testing in Sky High. Oh yeah, my suspension of disbelief sort of went boom. Because I don't care how bad, can you imagine? I could see this out of a junk hero school, like the, apply online kind of, if Sky High is supposed to be the pinnacle school, for superheroes. Now, I could see that sort of approach, letting the gym teacher separate the students into heroes and sidekicks, from like a run, from a back alley, cheaply run, substandard hero school. Now that would have made an interesting story too, if it turned out that the protagonist and his friends applied to Sky High, couldn't get in, and they had to go to some fly-by-night school instead. And it was run by jackasses like the gym teacher, But anyway, yeah, it was ridiculous, because and you look at that and no, even the worst no school would dare have such a ridiculous, arbitrary standard for picking no school will spit would have a heroes and sidekicks division in the first place. Because first of all, you got these kids. They're still, the whole plot was about the boy, the protagonist. His powers come in late. So obviously you've got these kids who are still going through puberty, and you can imagine what that does to their powers. They're still coming into their powers, and pigeonholing them right on the first day. That would be any parent heard about this is like, nope, we're taking our kid elsewhere. Yeah, I know what you mean. You got to keep your answers succinct when you're, Maybe it'd be better to call them, rescue workers instead of police students. That is their major objective. But whatever. Anyway. I don't know. At the USJ arc, when they have to battle that, when they end up battling that army of scrub villains. Aizawa demonstrated. Well, he demonstrated. Eraserhead demonstrated that he was a quality hero. That he could kick ass and take names. At least. But submitted for your consideration that the running gag about All Might being a teacher is that there's a big difference between being a great hero and being a great hero teacher. Bonesaw and My Little Pony. I'm really regretting putting that last line in that darn story. You know that? Because it was supposed to be a one-off joke. What do you think about ponies? And everybody is running off. Oh, you're going to do a story where Bonesaw ends up in My Little Pony Land and becomes a pony with a Bonesaw cutie mark. And no, I'm sorry. No. Just hell no, actually. What it boils down to is that the agents, or at least some members of his species, friends of his, perhaps, I'm not saying, I'm not going to get any more specific than that. They basically took pity on Riley, and they recognized that she was, she had done horrible things, but she was, first and foremost, she was a horribly traumatized little girl. She had been subjected to atrocities, and just had been basically brainwashed and tormented into becoming what she was. And she was still, even when she, even at the end of her story arc, she was still just a little girl. And they took pity on her, and they took her out of that situation, and they realized that, that there was no way she could ever recover staying in that world, because nobody would let her. Nobody would ever be able to let her, because they would be unable to forget what she had done, and she would be unable to forget what she had done, and there'd be too many people who want revenge against her, whether or not it was deserved. So they took her out of that situation. They were going to put her elsewhere, in another world, far away, where she could learn, she could make her peace with God, as it was, and learn to forgive herself and to be forgiven, and to try and make atonement, for the things she'd done. Yeah, they've not fallen into the trap of attempting to, My Hero Academia. They don't try and redeem every villain. No. Well, I'm wondering if they're going to try and redeem Shigami. The guy that makes things corrode and dissolve by touching them. I don't know. I think I've read somewhere that in the manga he dies. So. Oh, but what was it? I lost my train of thought. I'm kind of annoyed is that they have a couple of villains, in there. Okay, I'm thinking particularly of Bakugo and Endeavor. Both of those, call it my petty vengeance streak, but both in the story arc, Endeavor and Bakugo both get off incredibly lightly for what they've done. Bakugo, he has that big fight, with Izuku, but he never really admits, I was horrible. I bullied a kid. I didn't just bully any kid. I bullied a kid who was my friend. I bullied a kid who was my friend who was quirkless. That's the equivalent of beating up somebody in a wheelchair in that culture. And think about it. He spent their entire childhoods up until they were both ready to go to high school. He told Izuku, to go kill himself. Go throw yourself off a roof, and maybe you'll have a quirk in the next life. There's a reason that a lot of fan fictions mention the fact that Izuku uh, was somewhat suicidal by the time he met All Might. There's one fan fiction called Thank You. Thank You. It's some of the chapters are PG, be warned, but in Thank You, it starts out at the sports festival where he goes off and Izuku sees that Yayorozu Momo, the one who can make things out of make things out of her body fat, make it out of her skin. He sees that she's distressed because she had lost her match, and he goes to comfort her, and talk to her and try and boost her, and it leads to him and her becoming a couple. And she manages to pry out of she manages to pry Izuku's past out of him, and Izuku basically reveals that he was suicidal. That on more than one occasion he had climbed up on a roof, stood on the ledge, and thought about it. And there's a huge, there's several chapters. Bakugo finally gets confronted about it, and he basically has to have his nose rubbed in it before he realizes just how horribly he had bullied, and he discovers proof that Izuku had been suicidal, as in he found a suicide note, the remains of a suicide note, in the back of one of Izuku's notebooks. And he realizes, Bakugo has a genuine, my God, what have I done moment. And actually starts struggling to try and be a better person. No. In the comic, in the anime, and in the manga, no such thing. He's trying. He goes through a period of stress where he thinks that he caused, because of the way it happened. He thinks that he was kidnapped, and his kidnapping caused All Might to finally lose the last of his power. He's blaming himself for All Might having to retire. And that messes him up. But he never confronts himself about the about what he did to Izuku, and Izuku, being the poor codependent thing he is in canon, never confronts him about it either. And then there's Endeavor. Endeavor at least realizes, gee, maybe I was kind of a dick as a father, and promises his son I'm going to try and be better, and And I gotta agree with his son. His son's like, yeah, right, swell. I mean, canonically, I mean, they had flashbacks where he would beat his son Todoroki so badly, he left him puking on the floor, and the kid was barely 5 years old. And he at least struck his wife at least once. It was a habit. We're talking about a guy who was a child abuser and a wife beater, and Dabi, the villain with all the scar tissue on him. Dabi is his son that he estranged so violently that the kid ran off and became a villain because he couldn't control his quirk. That's the reason he has all those skin grafts because he burns himself with his own power. So both back, both of them, they have no come up, they have no point where they true, they where they truly regret what they've done. But Endeavor does show some regret, but so I'll give them that much. But I worry that this is petty of me, that it is it's unchristian of me that I've got this yen for karmic revenge on people, on characters that that offend my sensibilities. It's one of the things that I've done, that I'm most well known for in my writing, is the humiliation congas I put the villain of the piece through. I generally play it off for laughs, but it does bother me that I'm I've got such a unforgiving streak. As I said before, the probability bomb. That is a product. That is a project I've abandoned. It was just. My intention is that I'm going to reimburse. I'm going to reimburse the people that donated to the Kickstarter. That's going to probably take me the rest of my life. Frankly, I'll have to pay them pay it out a little bit at a time. But the probability bomb just bombed. I seriously overestimated First of all, I seriously overestimated my capacities as both a writer and an artist, and the storyline and what I had planned was just a disastrous hodgepodge. There were just too many things wrong with it, and no, it's. So I'm putting that in the box and saying no, and I'm going to if I ever manage to get that dang check deposited, I'm probably going to take at least a portion of it to reimburse some of the people that donated. It was poorly planned. It was poorly thought out. It was and it was trying to be too many things all at once. It was just not going to fly. It was just not going to soar. Even if I managed to get the entire thing written and all the other things that were supposed to go with it finished, I would be on the rocks to try and get money to get the thing printed. Just even just enough copies to distribute to the people who contributed. I grossly overestimated my capacities. So. Anyway. It wasn't what it was supposed to be, so. There were too many different things. No. Some people have been, when I mentioned this quite some time ago. And I said I was going to, some people were quite, kind and generous and said, don't worry about reimbursing us. We just contributed to help you out, and that was what it did. So to them, I say, well, thank you, but the rest, I'm still going to Still gonna, you know. I hate even thinking about that project. It's, just thinking about it brings me down. It'd be a different world for me if I had found the fan fictions on the internet before I had found webcomics and the furry community. You know, might have become a straight up a writer instead of a cartoonist. Hard to say. I'm gonna be one of those people that dies and their epitaphs. If I actually manage to do something that outlasts me, everybody will read my biography and it will end with "and he died." And he died in a trailer with massive debt. Surrounded by trash. Okay, there went my mood. There went my just straight off the edge, straight down, like Wile E. Coyote rolling out of bed in the morning. Yeah, I haven't given up on Tales of the Questor. It's just it's still going. It's slow. The reason I'm so peppy right now is because I got half a can of Monster in me. Caffeine and that's part of the reason I bought the 10 pack because I was gonna see. Let's see if this gives me enough vitality to finish a few things. I'm so tired of dragging my carcass through life. I really am. I've considered starting writing Tales of the Questor, as a text, with maybe some illustrations, spot illustrations, to see if that works faster. I think I'll try that. I think I'll give it a go. Wow, okay. That's crap. It literally just right off the ledge, my mood. I'm starting to wonder if maybe I should have my blood chemistry checked or something, or my can they check now my mom has a sort of a hormonal gland blood chemistry balance thing. She has to take a lot of medications to keep it balanced because under extreme stress, her body chemistry or her blood chemistry is just just whoosh, does a tailspin, and the first you can mess her up. The first symptom is extreme insomnia, and then it basically descends into dementia from just from lack of sleep and from side effects of the chemical thing. And she's had to go into care centers a couple of times over the years, just for 24-hour care to get her equilibrium back, and my grandfather had something similar, same thing almost, and some days I wonder if is my problem it would be very nice. It would be very nice to figure out the reason that your floopdiflorbigen count is off. You need to take this tablet, and this should balance it out. And approach the state of normal again. It's usually not that simple. Very rarely is, I suspect. Can you imagine what it'd be like? Imagine that you had spent from your entire life from birth, even, with some sort of odd, chemical imbalance in your blood, and you were, and you were operating at like subpar levels, mentally, mental faculty speaking, and you didn't even know it. And they come out with some pill, your so and so chemicals are imbalanced. You need to take this pill, and you take it, and you take it, and can you imagine that suddenly all six cylinders in your headspace are firing, and you just sort of go because you're experiencing reality in full high resolution for the first time. It's like the Terry Pratchett joke. One of the jokes was, the Klatchians, Middle Easterners in the Discworld, they were known for their coffee. For their exact Klatchian coffee. So it was almost as thick as mud, and he said it was so potent it could make you nerd, which was drunk spelled backwards. He said it wouldn't just make you sober. It would it would take you from drunk to stone cold sober. If you drank too much, it would take you from drunk to stone cold sober and out the other side. And you'd be so sober, and you'd see the universe as it truly is. And then after the screaming stopped, you'd have another cup of coffee. Somewhere out there is somebody who is, completely sober. Their neurochemistry is perfectly balanced. all their senses and all their organs and dimensions and everything are, at 100%, and he is perfectly aware, fully aware of how the world really is right around him, and nobody knows it. Mm. I'm sorry. I'm just uh, the past 3 days have been kind of, missed. Didn't sleep at all the night before last. There you go again. Started to drift off. Uh, yeah, let's see. Let's see. Today is Friday, and I didn't get any sleep Wednesday night. Got up early Thursday and ran all over the place. Up and down to the doctor and the hospital, to the pharmacy, and to Walmart. Pharmacy and Walmart in the same place. Tried to go to the bank. Bank was closed. And then I came home, made. Well, oh man, yeah, no kidding. I've got way too much. I've got other ideas that are poking in the back of my head. Oh, this would be a great idea for a story too. Poke, 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 poke. That's why I have that odds and ends, the oddments, so that if I get a story idea to poking me in the brain, I can put it down someplace so it'll leave me alone. Unfortunately, that's just sprouted new stories that are standing off by themselves now. That's how Coyote got started. That's how a bunch of others got started. Hmm. Oh my. Hmm. Oh. I will say this much: if Riley did, wherever Riley ends up, one of the things is, even though she will be genuinely penitent and she will genuinely want to do good, I think one of the things that's going, one of the things that's going to play her, she's going to have just absolutely no awareness of what disturbs or freaks other people out. It's okay, I saved your dog and cat that got hit by the car by sewing them together. Okay, I'm, I'm seriously starting to drift off while I'm sitting here, so I think I've about hit my limit for everything. When you can fall asleep on half a can of Monster Energy, it's time to just roll the ball up. Here's hoping I have something besides the coronavirus to talk about tomorrow. Ugh, goodness, good grief. But overall, this week's gone. A few things have gone well. The check arrived. Just have to wait a while before I can deposit it. I called and asked if I could mail it in. I mean, you can make deposits at some ATMs. Put the money in an envelope and stick it in there. But they won't let you do that. They won't let you mail it to them. You can put it in their ATM, but you can't let it mail it. What the hell's wrong with people? But my relief check arrived. I've got my groceries are you know here in the house. I got stuff, and got to the doctor. My legs, the wounds are still taking a heck of a time to heal, but they're healing at least, and they're not infected or anything like that. So that's another thing I'm very glad of, and things to be grateful for, things to be grateful to Jesus for. Let me tell you. And I've got a big box of bandages and other supplies for bandaging my legs so that I can take care of my legs. Hooray! And 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 I don't know. Uh, I've got a lot of decisions to make. I gotta. There are a lot of repairs that this house needs. One was a leak in the roof. I could burn right through that check in no time in just doing that. So either way, I'm going to hold on to the money. Crap. Do I have enough money left in my account to pay the mowing people? I don't think I do. I just realized. People's. I'm doing a quick check on. Well, actually, I do. If I don't send that check in right away, so I'm not going to worry about that. That's okay then. Okay then. Just gotta wait. Just gotta wait. So okay. A great deal of waiting involved. So that check would have to be like 10 times the size it was just for everything to get squared away. All the repairs to the house and the rent and the taxes and all the other things that have just got to be done. Just got to be done. But feeling kind of gunky. I'm starting to feel kind of gunky. Bleh. I have no idea who Luke Vader is. Luke being Darth Vader, saying all one for all being, yeah, I've heard a lot of speculation and there are fan fictions all over the place where Izuku is actually All for One's son. Okay. I hope not. I hope that the author isn't that cheap. Okay, only one person has done the Darth Vader Luke Skywalker thing, and that was only one couple of people have done the Luke Luke Skywalker Darth Vader is my father thing, and that is Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Everybody else, leave it alone. Leave it alone. It just looks like a bad joke at this point. So, okay. I'm pooped. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. It's 8:30, but I'm an old fart and I need my sleep. So I will see you probably tomorrow